Hey everybody, this is Jared. Today's date is August the 28th, 2014. And I'm back to read another poem today. I'm going to be reading a poem from one of my favorite poets, as I did last week. And today's featured poet is Robert Frost. And I'm sure a lot of poets out there, and even if you're not poets, I've heard Robert Frost's name at least once, or just kind of skated in the wind by your ear. But for those who have never heard of Robert Frost, let me give you a bit of a background on him. He was born in 1874 in San Francisco, California, and later settled in Derry, New Hampshire. He passed away in 1963. Some of his earlier works, his first works, were actually published in the UK before actually being published in the United States. He's considered one of the most highly respected poets of the 20th century and thereafter. His poems is very circumambient of rural life, and it's definitely reflected there. His first book of poetry was entitled A Boy's Will, which was published in 1913, and a year later, North of Boston was published. And I personally think that these are his two magnum opuses, just great genius works. He also recited a poem for John F. Kennedy Jr. For doing his inauguration as the President of the United States. He won 4 Pulitzer Prizes in poetry. He has a strong academic background, scholastic background, which also shows. But to me, his poetry spoke to everyone. It was universal, despite who you were and your social standing. His poem kind of reminds me of someone who never meets a stranger. A lot of people I've talked to a lot of people, who likes Robert Frost's poetry, and a lot of them seem to navigate towards his most popular work, and some people like some of his not so popular works. Poems like Mending Road, Mending Wall, Road Not Taken, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, and Acquainted with the Night are just some of the few. My particular poem, my favorite poem by Robert Frost, is a personal one entitled Birches. I think it's an absolutely brilliant poem. It's personal because it reminds me of the time when my grandmother lived in our neighborhood during the mid to late 80s, and we had a snowstorm around that time, and I remember having to go down to check up on her, and remembering the bare naked trees during that time, how each twig and each branch was kind of coated with ice, and even though in this parts of this poem, whenever I read it, it allows me to allude to that time. And with that, I'm going to read my favorite poem by Robert Frost, and I hope I do it justice, entitled Birches. Birches. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging them doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the steel cracks and crazes their enamel. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow-crust, such heaps of broken glass to sweep away you think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load, and they seem not to break, though once they are bowed so low for long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years after, trailing their leaves to the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broke in, with all her matter-of-fact about the ice storm, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows, some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them. And not one hung limp. Not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon. and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward feet first with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dreamed of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations and life is too much like a pathless wood, where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from the twigs having lashed across it open. I'd like to get away from earth a while, and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me, and half grant what I wish and snatch me away, not to return. Earth's the right place for love, and I don't know where it's likely to go better. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good, both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches. I love this poem. I love it so much. And thank you guys for listening. And if you have any questions about this poem or any other poem that I've recited, including my own poems, please make sure to comment on my blog and ask questions. I really, really like that. I will be back next week to read another poem by a favorite poet of mine. And wow, this poem's going to have me thinking about that time again when my grandmother was alive and living in the same neighborhood with us. But again, thank you guys so much, and I will see you next week. This is Jared.